Hello everyone! In anticipation for the upcoming release of Dragon Guardian Earth, which is, if you don't already know, book 4 in my Primordian Chronicles, I have decided that I just thought it would be fun to do a few teasers in the days leading up to the book's release. So tonight I'm gonna do a teaser from chapter 3. I'm not gonna say where in chapter 3 or what happened leading up to it or what happens afterwards, but figured it'd be a fun little, it's a teaser. It's meant to be enjoyed. So I should apologize ahead of time in the event that you hear any crashes or loud noises. I have 3 cats, and naturally they decided that when mommy is trying to do something important like this, they decided that this is the perfect time for them to all get the zoomies at the same time. I don't know if you just heard that, but that was 1 or 2 of them right now. Anyway, getting on to the teaser, here we go, from chapter 3. Happily nestled into the warmth of Taliesin's body, Marin continued to sleep soundly, ever lulled by the strong and steady beat of her husband's heart, coupled with the rise and fall of his chest as he drew breath. Her bliss had not once abated since the previous night, and even as she slumbered on in that moment, she was in a state of perfect contentment. Completely oblivious to the worries of her companions or to the state of her castle, even as flowers bloomed upon the vines that continued to creep into her room, Marin did not begin to awaken until she felt something tickling her nose. She absently brushed it away, with the smallest of annoyed groans, before nestling deeper into the warmth of her husband and their bed, ignoring the tingle of magic along her skin. Oh, for goodness sake! There was not this much greenery here when I left earlier. Unsure as to whether Noctum's familiar voice was actually real or part of some new dream, Marin ignored it. She was determined to hang on to her moment of tranquility for as long as she possibly could. Marin? Marin, wake up. Marin grumbled wordlessly and stubbornly kept her eyes closed, ignoring the clacking sound of claws moving against stone. That was when she felt the swat of a tail against her backside. While not exactly hard, it was nevertheless impossible to ignore, and Marin opened her eyes halfway with a scowl. "Noctum," she whispered, "so help me." "Oh, stop your grumbling and just look around you." "Nah," Marin grouched while snuggling back down into her warm cocoon. "Look." "Bleh. Open your eyes and look, woman." "No," Marin hissed. "I'll bite you." "You wouldn't dare," Marin whispered. "Care to find out?" Noctum snapped his jaws for added emphasis. "Fine. It'll shut you up." Marin grouched under her breath as she carefully shifted away from Taliesin and then rose onto her knees. "This had better be good." Having been rubbing the sleep from her eyes, Marin blinked several times when she came face to face with a large lavender flower, and the half-elf slowly panned her gaze around the jungle that was now her room. "How?" she wondered aloud while reaching for her dressing gown that was draped over the foot of the bed. It was backless in order to accommodate her wings, and Marin donned it before slipping from the bed. "What in the—" "Good enough for you?" Noctum asked dryly as he sat and slowly swished his tail back and forth. He watched as Marin turned a small circle while bemusedly staring at the veritable wilderness in her room. "I do believe it's safe to assume that the powers of the Earth Dragon have awakened within you at last." "Yes, but how?" Marin asked incredulously. Taliesin stirred in his sleep. "Did you say something, love?" he asked sleepily, while sitting up and rubbing his eyes, his dark hair disheveled. He blinked once upon being greeted by the sight of all the foliage that filled the room, and then turned his head so his gaze rested upon his wife. "Earth Dragon?" he asked simply. "Possibly," Marin replied. "Why only possibly?" Taliesin asked while climbing out of bed and padding over to the chair upon which his own dressing gown was draped. He donned it while turning to face Marin, eyebrow raised in question. "Because if this is in fact the result of the powers of the Earth Dragon, I don't know how the power manifested within me," Marin replied. "I don't know what happened to trigger it." Taliesin lightly tapped his chin in thought. "Have you—" He was cut off by the sound of knocking at their door. "Are you decent?" came Valius's voice from the other side of the door. "Yes, come in," Marin answered once Taliesin had fastened his robe closed. "Everyone you care about has been accounted for," Duncan announced as he and Valius stepped into the room and closed the door behind them. "So, let's start from the beginning. Why are you sad?" Marin blinked and canted her head to the side in confusion. "Sad? I'm not sad." "All right, then. Angry," Valius countered. "What has set you off?" "Nothing," Marin replied incredulously. "I'm not angry." "You're not even a little bit perturbed?" Duncan asked pointedly. "Annoyed, perhaps?" "No, but I'm getting there," Marin retorted with an underlying growl. Valius put a hand upon Duncan's shoulder in signal for him to be silent. "Forgive us, Marin, but in the past when your powers would first manifest, it was while you were in the grips of powerful emotion, anger, sorrow, happiness." Taliesin interjected with the smallest of smiles, tugging at the corners of his mouth as his gaze rested upon his beloved. Marin blinked. That would be quite the change indeed," she replied while meeting Taliesin's gaze as a ghost of a smile played over her lips. "Rather welcome one, I would think," Valius added, "if it was in fact true." "What are you talking about?" Duncan asked. "I mean, of course Marin's been happy. But not that happy. Not happy enough to make something like this happen." "No, Taliesin makes a good point," Marin replied while tentatively reaching out to a flower that had just started to bloom. She lightly brushed her fingers over the still-closed bloom, and it leaned into her touch before blossoming fully. "After I returned you to the castle yesterday, Duncan, I was gone for hours, flying and bonding with my dragons." She smiled. "It was the happiest I'd felt in—" She sighed. "Well, let's just say that it's been a long while since I've felt that happy and carefree, and—" She shyly cleared her throat. "That happiness only continued to grow well into the night." She smiled covertly at Taliesin, and her fingers instantly intertwined with his once he had drawn close enough. "Pleases me greatly to hear you say that, my love," Taliesin murmured lovingly with a smile while raising Marin's hand to his lips so he could brush a kiss to her knuckles. For the first time since entering the room, Valius looked genuinely confused, and he tilted his head to the side as he regarded the pair. "What do you—" Duncan cleared his throat and nudged Valius in the side before pulling the taller elf down to his level so he could whisper into his ear. He could not stop himself from smirking when Valius's cheeks turned pink with his blush. "Oh," Valius coughed and cleared his throat. "All right, fair enough. Well, there is one surefire way for us to test if the powers of the Earth Dragon have awakened within you, or if there is something else at work, Marin." He motioned to the jungle that surrounded them. "All of the keep is like this. Perhaps you could do something about it." "I'll do my best," Marin replied with a nod, before letting go of Taliesin's hand and frowning in thought. "Where would I even begin?" she whispered. more to herself than to anyone else while running her fingers through her hair. If you can lift a dragon and a moat, you can send all these vines and shrubberies away, Taliesin encouraged with a smile. Start small. Marin looked at her husband and raised an eyebrow while motioning to the greenery that surrounded them all. I think the time for small is well past us, darling, she remarked cheekily with a fond wink. Duncan smirked and sniggered before coughing and clearing his throat. Yes, you certainly don't do anything by halves, do you? He teased. Never you mind what Taliesin and I do or don't do, Marin grumbled with a small sideways glare. Duncan chuckled good-naturedly and held up his hands in mock defeat. All I'm saying is, how about you just start with this room? We'll go from there. Vilius nodded in agreement. It will give you the chance to shake the kinks out, he said before looking to Duncan in confusion when the younger elf snorted in amusement before sniggering under his breath. What? It will, he remarked. Yes, we certainly wouldn't want any kinks or deviations of any kind now, would we? Duncan teased with a smirk and a raised eyebrow. Certainly not, Vilius replied with a shake of his head, missing Duncan's joke entirely. And taking care of a single room will certainly be infinitely easier than attempting to deflower an entire castle. Both Duncan and Taliesin snorted then. Oh, yes, Taliesin managed, while failing miserably to subdue his smirk. No doubt about that. For all his efforts, Taliesin had simply been unable to help himself. Before Marin could silence the two elves, she heard the sound of all too familiar laughter echoing through her head. Oh, not you lot too, she grumbled, before looking pointedly at Noctum upon hearing his chuckles join that of the other dragons. Really? You too? I'm not devoid of humor. Have I missed something? Vilius asked confusedly with a raised eyebrow as he looked back and forth between those in the room. I hope you enjoyed that. Be sure to stay tuned, and for any other updates, be sure to subscribe to my channel. Actually, that way you'll be notified when I post a new teaser. And I've got, let's see, I'm looking at my tablet here. Please don't judge me. I'm looking at my tablet and I see that I have 2 more teasers planned between now and December 1st, which is the release date for book number 4. Again, that's the 4th one. The 4th and final book in the series, I might add. So you're certainly not going to want to miss these little tidbits. Again, I hope you enjoyed it. I'm glad that the cats decided to behave themselves. So I guess my warning wasn't really needed. But whatever. Anyway, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed what you heard. And feel free to check out my website. It's going to be linked below in the comment section. And I'll see you again next time. Bye.